Pentagon stunned Sweden for decades. One invisible force has quietly dictated the global balance of military power. It isn't a treaty. It isn't an army. It's a web of regulations from Washington, D.C. called ITAR, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations. This legal maze has been a golden leash on America's allies, making sure that even when they build their own state-of-the-art weapons, the Pentagon keeps a silent veto. If a fighter jet, a tank, or a missile has a critical American part, Washington decides where it can be sold, and more importantly, where it can't. For a nation like Sweden, which built its entire defense industry on the promise of neutrality and independence, this has been a tough pill to swallow. Its masterpiece, the Saab Gripen fighter, is famous for being a giant killer, a cheaper, nimbler alternative to the titans of American air power. But its heart, the powerful F-414 engine, was made in America, and with it came American strings. But what if I told you that leash just snapped? What if a small, historically neutral Scandinavian nation just pulled off a move so strategically brilliant, so gutsy, that it threatens to rewrite the rules of the global arms race? This isn't just a story about a new jet engine or some corporate deal. This is the story of a technological rebellion, a declaration of independence aimed right at the heart of America's dominance in the sky. The Pentagon is watching, and for the first time in a long time, they might not have a counter move. Sweden, working quietly with a British engineering giant, may have just figured out how to build a truly sovereign fighter jet, and in doing so, they may have just changed the global balance of power forever. To really get what's happening here, you have to understand the most powerful weapon that isn't a weapon at all: ITAR. On the surface, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations seems like a reasonable set of laws. They're designed to keep U.S. defense technology from falling into the wrong hands. But in the world of geopolitics and billion-dollar defense deals, it's become something much more: the ultimate tool of American leverage. Imagine you're a country that spent billions developing a world-class fighter jet. You've engineered a marvel of aerodynamics and electronic warfare. But to get the performance you need, you had to use the best engine you could find. And that engine was the General Electric F-414. It's a beast, reliable, powerful, and the same engine used in the U.S. Navy's F/A-18 Super Hornet. The moment you chose that engine, you unknowingly handed the Pentagon a remote control for your entire export strategy. You put on what the industry calls the golden handcuffs. They look good, they feel powerful, but they are still handcuffs. This was exactly the spot Saab, the maker of the Gripen, found itself in. The Gripen EF series is, by any measure, a phenomenal jet. It's designed for 21st century threats. It can take off from makeshift runways on highways, it has one of the world's most advanced electronic warfare systems, and it costs a fraction to operate compared to competitors like the F-35. It's the perfect fighter for nations that want top-tier power without the massive price tag or logistical footprint of a superpower's air force. It represents sovereignty and independence, except that independence was never total. Every time Saab started talks with a potential buyer, the U.S. State Department was the elephant in the room. Would Washington approve the sale? Does the customer's foreign policy line up with America's? If the answer was no, the deal was dead. It didn't matter what the Swedish government wanted or what Saab's sales team promised. The American-made heart of the Gripen was the gatekeeper. For years, this was just the cost of doing business. Allies accepted the trade-off to get their hands on premier American tech. But under the surface, frustration was building. Nations like Sweden, with proud engineering histories and a defense strategy built on self-reliance, were getting tired of being treated like junior partners. They were building the plane and selling the plane, but they never had full control. The dream of a truly sovereign fighter, one free from the political moods of another nation, was becoming a strategic necessity. The question wasn't if a country would try to break these golden handcuffs, but how and when. All the world needed was a catalyst, a moment so frustrating it would force a country to finally say, enough. That moment, as it turned out, was about to happen in South America. The stage for this drama was set in Colombia during the heated competition to modernize its aging air force. For years, the Colombian government had been looking for a replacement for its old Kfir fighters. This was a huge contract, worth billions, and it drew in the world's top players. In one corner stood the American giant, Lockheed Martin, offering its legendary F-16 Block 70. In the other was Sweden's Saab, with its nimble and high-tech Gripen E. On paper, the Gripen was a near-perfect fit for Colombia. Its ability to operate from rough airfields, its low running costs, and its powerful sensor suite made it a very attractive option. Saab went all in, offering great financing deals, industrial cooperation, and significant technology transfer. For a while, it really looked like the Swedish jet was the frontrunner. It seemed David was about to land a major blow on Goliath. But then, the shadow of ITAR crept over the Andes. While the US never issued a formal public veto, the situation told the whole story. Colombia is a close strategic partner of the United States. Its military works hand in hand with American forces. The idea of bringing in a non-American fighter, even one with a US engine, raised tricky questions about logistics and political alignment. The conversations that likely happened in Washington through quiet diplomatic channels were probably a masterclass in strategic pressure. There was no need for a big public rejection. Instead, the benefits of choosing the American F-16 were highlighted. Easy interoperability with the US and other allies, the strength of the political alliance, and the unspoken promise of ongoing support. Meanwhile, the potential complications of the Gripen were just left hanging in the air. The truth was that choosing the Gripen meant dealing with a third party, the United States, that would always have a seat at the table for the life of the plane. In late 2025, Colombia made its choice: the F-16. Publicly, the decision was about cost, proven performance, and the strong US-Colombia partnership. But for industry watchers, and especially for strategists in Stockholm, the message was crystal clear. They had lost a multi-billion-dollar deal, not because their jet was worse, but because its supply chain led straight back to its main competitor. The golden handcuffs had just cost them $3.65 billion. This wasn't just a lost sale for Saab, it was a wake-up call for Sweden. The Colombian episode proved that as long as the Gripen depended on a critical, ITAR-controlled American part, its market would always be limited. It could never be a truly independent choice. It would always be tied to the strategic interests of the United States. For a nation that prides itself on sovereignty, this was an unacceptable weakness. The search for a way out, for a freedom Gripen, was no longer just talk. It was a national priority. And the solution, it turned out, was waiting just across the North Sea. Section 3. The European Rebellion, the Rolls-Royce Gambit. This is where the story gets interesting. This is where David reveals he's been secretly building a new slingshot. While the world was watching the Gripen's sales pitches, Sweden was quietly laying the groundwork for a technological coup. The target? To break the Gripen's reliance on American engines. The partner? One of the most legendary names in engineering, Rolls-Royce. The key to this whole plan is an engine that already exists, one that powers Europe's own Eurofighter Typhoon. That engine is the Eurojet EJ200. The EJ200 is a masterpiece in its own right, developed by a group of European companies, with Britain's Rolls-Royce as the lead partner. And here's the kicker: its design, its parts, and its intellectual property are all 100% European. It is completely ITAR-free. For years, the problem with putting an EJ200 type engine into a Gripen was that it just didn't fit. The size, thrust, and systems were all different. It would require a massive, costly redesign of the Gripen's airframe. But after the Colombian deal fell through, the math changed. The cost of not redesigning the Gripen was now clear: a permanently limited market and a state of total dependency. Suddenly, the plan to integrate a European engine wasn't just an idea, it was essential. And that's when whispers started circulating in the defense world about something more than just a standard EJ-200. The rumors spoke of a new, optimized version, an engine people were calling the EJ-230. This wasn't just about swapping parts. It was about creating a new, tailor-made heart for the Gripen, a Freedom engine. This conceptual EJ-230 would be designed to give the Gripen the thrust it needs for its unique high-performance, low-altitude missions. It would be a European engine for a European fighter, creating a purely European product with no strings attached to Washington. Skeptics might call this a fantasy, but the evidence of a deepening partnership between Sweden and Rolls-Royce is undeniable, and it's happening in another critical area: nuclear energy. In the last 2 years, Rolls-Royce's small modular reactor, SMR division, has signed major deals in Sweden. They teamed up with the Swedish nuclear firm Studsvik and were then shortlisted by the state-owned power company Vattenfall to potentially build new SMRs. This isn't a coincidence, it's a pattern. We're watching two of Europe's most advanced industrial bases merge. The trust and cooperation being built in the nuclear energy space are creating the perfect foundation for a much deeper collaboration in defense. The idea that this partnership would stop at reactors and not spill over into the multi-billion-dollar aerospace market is, frankly, naive. The SMR deals are the canary in the coal mine, signaling a new era of Anglo-Swedish industrial partnership. The plan is as brilliant as it is bold. First, use the existing ITAR-free EJ-200 as a starting point. Second, partner with Rolls-Royce to develop a custom version, the EJ-230, that perfectly fits the Gripen. And third, this is the masterstroke, use the partnership to build new supply chains outside of U.S. influence. There's already talk of production hubs in places like Canada, where a company like Bombardier could partner with Saab to build an ITAR-free Gripen in North America. This would create an export machine completely outside of Washington's control. This isn't happening overnight. It's a long-term, deliberate strategy. But all the pieces are moving into place. Sweden isn't just buying an engine off the shelf. It's teaming up with one of Europe's industrial giants to forge a path to true technological freedom. The shock in the Pentagon isn't about a single engine. It's the realization that the game itself is changing, and they might not be the only ones making the rules anymore. So, what does a world with an ITAR-free Freedom Gripen actually look like? The fallout would be nothing short of revolutionary, sending shockwaves through the global defense industry and challenging the very foundation of American aerospace power. Let's look at the immediate opportunities. Think about India, whose massive Make in India program has been slowed by worries over technology transfer. Now, imagine Saab walking into New Delhi with the ultimate offer, a top-tier Gripen E powered by a Rolls-Royce engine, with a guarantee of 100% technology transfer and no American oversight. This single deal could reorient the Indian Air Force for decades and lock the US out of a market worth tens of billions. Then you've got Canada. The Canadian government's decision to buy the F-35 has been controversial due to its staggering cost. An ITAR-free Gripen, possibly built in Canada with a partner like Bombardier, presents a powerful alternative. It would be a capable, NATO-compatible fighter that's cheaper to operate and would pour billions back into Canada's own aerospace industry. The political appeal of a made-in-Canada fighter jet, free from the unpredictable policies of a neighbor, is huge. The list goes on. Nations across South America, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe that have been hesitant to tie their national security so tightly to Washington would suddenly have a real, high-performance option. The Gripen would transform from a niche alternative fighter into the default choice for any nation that is technologically ambitious but politically independent. For the Pentagon, this is a nightmare scenario. It's not about losing a few sales, it's about watching their leverage crumble. For decades, the US has used its tech superiority to shape the world's militaries and political alignments. By controlling critical parts like jet engines, it could reward allies and keep other powers in check. An ITAR-free Gripen, armed with European missiles and electronics, shatters that model. It creates a parallel ecosystem for advanced weapons where the US is just another competitor, not the gatekeeper. The reaction inside the Pentagon is likely one of cold, calculated alarm. Analysts are probably running the numbers, calculating the potential loss of market share in the tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars. But more importantly, they are assessing the loss of influence. How do you pressure a country when you no longer hold the keys to its air force? This is a crisis of control. Sweden's move, born from frustration, has exposed the weakness in America's strategy. By pushing its allies too hard, Washington has accidentally given them a reason to find an escape route. And now that Sweden has drawn the map, other European nations with advanced defense industries will be watching closely. The era where all roads in military aerospace led back to America could be ending. Want to stay ahead of the geopolitical shifts that are reshaping our world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that bell icon so you get notified every time we release a new analysis breaking down the tech and strategies that define modern warfare. In the end, what we're witnessing is more than just a corporate rivalry or a new product launch. It's a defining moment in modern defense history. The story of the Gripen and its Rolls-Royce heart is a lesson in strategic jujitsu. A smaller nation, feeling the squeeze from a superpower, didn't fight back with force. It simply stepped aside and changed the game board. Sweden found the single point of American control, the engine, and engineered a way to remove it. By partnering with Rolls-Royce and leveraging a deepening alliance with the UK, Saab is on the verge of creating something the world has been waiting for: a truly sovereign, top-tier fighter jet. The name Freedom Gripen is more than just a catchy phrase. It's a declaration of intent. Freedom from ITAR, freedom from American political vetoes, and the freedom for a nation to control its own destiny. The Pentagon isn't stunned because Sweden built a better engine. It's stunned because Sweden dared to build a different system. A system where American approval is no longer required. The impact will unfold over years, in contract talks in New Delhi, and in strategy sessions across the globe. This quiet move by a historically neutral nation could do more to create a multipolar world than years of political speeches. The 21st century arms race may not be about who has the stealthiest fighter, but about who holds the keys to the supply chain. And as of today, Sweden just forged a new set.